Have you found your passion? Are you living your dream? Now, that question is going to be answered by someone who's coming here shortly. Now, you're listening to Now Tell Us. I'm your host, Anthony Muirore. At Now Tell Us, we have guests come and tell us stories. They come and inspire us. They come and educate us on a subject. And always we have great guests. And when I say always, I think today's guest is very special. Yeah, that's how I consider him once I came across him, a special person who's going to be talking to us about finding your passion, living your dream. His name is John Brink. He's going to be here shortly. But before he comes, let me remind you to please share this episode with all your friends. Yes, you need to. And if you have a question about passion or about dream, then you're welcome to ask it. And any feedback that you give us, we really appreciate. We thank you in advance. So keep it there, keep it right here. This is Now Tell Us once again. I'm your host, Anthony Murore, a motivational speaker and author. I've authored a book known as Be Good for Good that has got stories of goodness with lessons on life, and also the Achieve Your Dream workbook that has the 7 ingredients for success. And now, why don't you join me as we go together to meet our very special guest, John Brink? Here we go. Hello, John.
Hey, Anthony, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Wonderful. Good to have you here on our show today.
Well, my pleasure.
Yeah, let me first begin by telling you I highly respect those people who've been here more years than I have been. And so I am always very willing to sit and listen for him or her tell us. This is Now Tell Us. It's your time to tell us. And I know, let me just highlight it to the listener or the viewer today. Whatever we are going to talk about today, we can't exhaust what John has. He's got a wealth of information, and I'm just excited. I can just keep quiet the whole episode and just wait for John to speak. Now, please, can we know who is John? Who is John in your own words? You, John Brink. Who is he?
In my own words,
Yep. Yep.
I'm a fellow that lives in Canada. Was born in Holland.
Mhm.
I'm 83, approaching 84 years young, and I intend to be 120. I stay fit and healthy, and and I am very active in business. I'm an author, I'm a public speaker, I'm an active podcaster, and I love life. And my foundation is attitude, passion, work ethic, and what follows is success.
Hmm.
That's me.
That's you. Wow, what a description. And we see that people are very eager to just watch this episode or listen to this episode because we know that you've got to share with us. And I don't know where to start. I'm so excited. I don't know where to start, but let me start here. I was looking at your profile and I am seeing you a very active person. I see that you're nationally ranked as the oldest bodybuilder in North America. Can we just maybe start there? Living young, dying old. That's John A. Brink. That's a book.
That book comes out in August,
Oh,
and it
so I
shows,
started. So I started in the future.
yes, and it shows me training for I'm supposedly the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America. I
Mhm.
competed Northern BC bodybuilding and physique, came in second bodybuilding, third in physique, qualified me for the provincials, came in the same, but qualified me for the nationals in the Arnolds. And then obviously what happened is COVID and 2 years of kind of sitting back, but still training to a certain extent. And then training again now to go to the Arnolds, I hope in 2025 when I'm 85. And so I'm training and staying fit. And in the meantime, I'm writing a book about it that is nearly done. Living young,
Dying.
dying old means to me the number is not important, it's quality of life. That's what it is all about.
Wow, it's a good book. I should be looking forward to read it and get some wisdom from it. And yeah, so we'll look forward to that. Now, I started in the future. Maybe take us back to when you were born, when you were growing, and how it was back then. Uh, Dive us into that, please, John.
Okay, I was born November the 1st, 1940, in northeastern Holland.
Mm-hmm.
And if you kind of visualize Holland, I know you are in Athens, so you're familiar with Holland, relatively small country.
Yeah.
And think about again 1940, although
Mm-hmm.
you were likely not around then, but I was born then, and it was a tough time because Holland would be invaded by the German forces that would take it over for the next 5 years. Uh, my family, again in northeastern Holland, close to the German border, and in that corner, my dad was drafted into the Dutch army in April of 1940. My mother was pregnant with me. I had a sister 1 year older than me, brother 2 years older. And for the last time that they heard from him is when Rotterdam was bombed. And that's the last place that he was seen in downtown Rotterdam, big city. The Germans were trying to force Holland into, giving up, and didn't go fast enough, so they bombed Rotterdam. Thousands of people died, and would not know if he was dead or alive for 5 years. So what followed is a tough time. I started remembering things from when I was about 3.5, 4 years old, and that were bombers overhead. As you likely know, the Allied forces landed in Normandy in the summer of 1943, and gradually made their way through Belgium and then western side of Holland, and then started pushing them out. At the same time, already bombers were bombing the critical parts of Germany. And again, visualizing northeastern Holland, a lot of the planes would come over our area, and just to get a feeling of it. In a lot of cases, there would be 300, 400 planes in the air. And to visualize, Anthony, the sound of that is something that you will never forget and likely will never hear again. And and what my mother would do, she would take us outside in the evenings on a flat roof that we had behind the house, not to watch it, but she
Mm-hmm.
felt safer outside than inside. And in the distance, again, visualize northeastern Holland. Just on across the border, we had Bremen, Wilhelmshaven, Kiel, Hamburg, and in the distance, we could see the sky being red of all the cities that were being bombed. And
Mm-hmm.
so that is the first memory that I have, that amazing, unbelievable sound of hundreds of planes. And then the anxiety and the fear that I could feel from my mother, as you do instinctively, that there was danger. And then from there on forward, the next thing that I remember is what we call the hunger winter of 1944-45,
Mm-hmm.
where things were getting very, very difficult. The Germans had then cut off all food supply to most of Holland. And as kids, we would go, there was no food, and everybody had the same issues and problems. And so we would go every morning. My myself, my brother, my sister, and me with gunny sacks to the railroad yards and pick up anything edible or burnable. And the reason that we did is because the Germans wouldn't shoot us; they would boot us one, but we'd be back the following day. And so from even that period still now nearly 80 years ago, really, 78, 79, I can still feel the feeling of hunger. It
Mm.
still is that feeling that is still, I can still feel it today. And then the other part is there was no heat. It was the hunger winter, and it was the coldest winter on record. So we had this little part of our house, a little heater, and we be sitting around there, too hot in front and cold in the back, and I still can feel the cold. And the other part that always stayed with me is the anxiety of the parent, and then subsequently, seeing then far too much that I shouldn't have seen, and something that stays with you even as a young person is. And the result of us PTSD, obviously, and then being the inner child or the fear of losing that one parent always stayed with me. Got counseling for that actually when I
Mhm.
was in my 50s. Very emotional. And then the next thing that happened with us is that the Canadian Army liberated that part of Holland where I was born on April the 12th, 1945. And I remember that because the Canadians pushed and again visualized Holland, the northeastern part. The German forces were trying to get back to the border, get back
Mhm.
to Germany, and they were getting closer. They had nothing left then, blew up all the bridges behind them, and became very had obviously anxiety, and the Canadians came very very close, and we saw far too many things that we should not have seen. People being shot, and then there was a period of no man's land, and a bridge right in front of a house was blown up actually, and years later, I went back there because I still remember laying in the crawl space under our house. There was a grid in front of our door, and I looked through the window. I had pillows on either side, and I
Mhm.
could see the door. And when they blew up the bridge in front of our house, that I still remember even that part. And then when there was a period of no man's land, and a lot of people the underground would come in, collect the collaborators, and some of them got shot right in front of our house, and all those things together was a tough time, and part of it stayed with me, and then the other part, especially now, when we collectively look at the things that are happening. A lot of people think that if you have war, and I say that
Mhm.
respectfully, obviously, that after the war is over, everything goes back to normal. It doesn't. It
Mhm.
simply doesn't. It could take a generation. It could take two generations, in fact. And all the things that we see in the Eastern Europe with the Ukraine, the Middle East, and the other parts is that that the results of those kind of wars will stay with them for years and years and generations. So so it always stayed with me. But I was so impressed by the Canadians liberating us that I always knew from the time I was nearly 5 years old that
Mhm.
when at at some point, sooner rather than later, I would go to the land of my heroes.
Mhm.
Canada. I tried to go when I was 17, and my parents wouldn't let me then. Then I was drafted into the Dutch Air Force for 2 years. And then finally, that dream always stayed with me.
Mhm.
Part to add to the story, which is important, I was not academically very successful. I
Mhm.
failed three, and I failed grade seven three times. And then they said, what are we going to do with this guy? We're going to send him to the mentally challenged school, or should we teach him a trade? And my parents were beautiful people, and so they decided send me to a furniture factory and at 13, and then become a furniture maker. So that's what I did at 13. And then with friends, a lot of times, they can be very hard on you.
Yes.
And all the friends that were in grade 7 with me, and then eventually went on to college and university and all those kind of things. I became a laborer. I'm proud of that today, but then it was kind of looked down on. So I kind of felt in a way, although I was happy-go-lucky, I
Mm-hmm.
kind of felt I had failed. And so combining all the things, I already was quite successful in Holland even after I came out of the Air Force. I felt I had to prove to me that I could do it. So I wanted to start going to Canada when I was 23. I wanted to start with nothing. I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't speak the language, didn't know a soul, didn't have a job. But I was going to build a lumber mill. Why a lumber mill? Because my grandfather was a master carpenter. My dad was managing a small lumber company, and I was trained as a furniture maker. So that was, to me, automatic. And so I took $150, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and a suitcase, and I left Amsterdam and flew into Montreal, took the train across Canada. That's a long way, 4 days, 5 nights.
Yeah.
Landed in Vancouver. Went to the immigration office. Fortunately, there was a German fellow there, and I told him what I wanted to do. I was going to build a lumber mill. He said, Prince George. Now, for our guest watching, you say, where is Prince George? It's in British Columbia. Think of Canada, big
Mm-hmm.
country, beautiful province, British Columbia, and British Columbia is big. So we know Victoria or Vancouver.
Mm-hmm.
So I landed in Vancouver, and where is Prince George? It's 500 miles north of Vancouver, or
Okay.
800 kilometers. It is physically in the center of British Columbia, north to south, east to west. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's where I want. And when I came, uh, the bus ride, Greyhound bus, was about 14 hours. When I came off the bus with my suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, I counted my money at least 3 times. I had exactly $25.47.
Mm-hmm.
I had plenty of is attitude. No matter how tough it is, I always believe tomorrow is going to be better. Never give up. Passion. Whatever I do, I give it 150%. And work ethic to me is important. I work harder than anybody, and then what will follow is success. Even today, at approaching or going towards 84, I still get up at 5:30 in the morning. I always think I'm late. I always make my bed, and then I give it all that I got. Usually work about 60, 70 hours a week, even now. Uh, and I'm not saying hurrah, hurrah, how successful John is. That's not what this is all about. But, I have probably 10 different companies. I become an author. I'm working on my fourth and fifth book. I'm a public speaker, and obviously I'm very active podcaster. So, and the most important part now for me is to kind of, as we look back and then look at, and especially growing up during the war years and seeing the results of it. My dad would come back, but was never the same again, and it stayed with him until he died. Never talked about it. Never got it resolved, and
Mm.
and so that how important it is to appreciate. I do a lot of flying around for my business, both in the United
Okay.
States and in Canada. Is that I look out of the window and I in the States or in North America, and I say it's paradise. It is paradise.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other part, while the question is so much alive today, democratic government is not perfect. It is flaws, but it's much better than the alternative being dictatorship. If you want to try it, go to Russia, North Korea, Iran, or all those kind of places. We have the best, the absolute best that we can have,
Mm.
and and I'm a judge on it because I'm a product of it, and carried it with me so importantly for the rest of my life. But today, so I speak about a lot of things: opportunity and attitude and staying positive. And I love the platform of podcasting and have interaction with people like yourself and Atten. I think tomorrow we'll be talking to somebody in Peru and
Mm.
on and on from around the world, so I just love it,
Yeah, and we need to hear this from you, and it's good that you are telling us. Now, up until this point, now, and thank you for that story for bringing us to how you came to where you are, and we all already talked to where you're looking forward to. But I'm curious, what were the three books that were in the briefcase?
Good question, Anthony. It was Management by Drucker in Dutch. And then the other one was Logical Thinking in Dutch. And then the other one was about Canada. Those were the three books.
Wow, so interesting topics. So,
Yes,
one thing I see in those books is that you were always concerned about your personal growth, and more than that, you were concerned about your future. So, you had to study something about your future that was going to improve the person you are so that you can be able to face your future. Am I correct?
correct. The challenge for me was, Anthony, is that I still felt I came to Canada with nothing. Started as a cleanup man, 2547 will not buy you a lumber mill, but I knew I would do it. It was not if, but when. So when I started, couldn't speak language, didn't know a soul, didn't have any family here. Started as a cleanup man, then a lumber pilot, then within a year, I was a superintendent of one of the largest lumber mills here. That didn't go fast enough for me. Within 2 years, I was part owner of a small sawmill and then bought the place that I was staying in. Of all places in the world, where was it, John, it was in the Yukon Territory. Tell us where the Yukon Territory is. It's right next to Alaska. And so what's the temperature? Ask me, tell me what is the temperature there. Now I came from Holland, very moderate temperature, as you know. So I saw it 62 below zero. I
Mm-hmm.
was there for about 5 years, gave it all away. It's all in my book, Against All Odds. I gave it all away for $1 and then started all over again and then started a new company that is the Brink group of companies that I still have today. It's now 50 years ago that I started that and be quite successful with a number of other companies. And, I love it. And we're still going to expand further with our operations. We have three silos. The one is lumber, the one is warehousing, logistics, and distribution, and the other one is real estate, commercial, and industrial. So that's kind of what we do.
Wow. I sure believe that you know a thing or two. So that's something that we could actually talk for a long time. If you hold a company for 50 years, you definitely know something that many people don't know because as statistics tell us is that not many companies last for more than 3 years. So going 50 years and moving, and that's quite an encouraging story. Now let's go back a bit. Uh, Angela is here with us. She's one of our viewers, and she's very encouraged hearing your stories about the Nazi-occupied Holland during the Second World War, and she thanks you for sharing it.
Beautiful. Thank you.
In which of your books can she find more stories of that?
Against All Odds. And I'll
Against
show you
all
this is the first book that I wrote.
Mm-hmm.
And now I don't have to tell you, but writing books is not easy. So
Yeah,
I
it is not.
a lot of people said to me, "You have such an interesting life. Why don't you write a book?" And I thought about it, so I stopped for 20. Stop, start, stop, start, and then finally I thought, if I don't do it now, 5, 6 years ago, it will never happen. And
Mm-hmm.
so I started it, and it's all about the challenges along the way. It's not about how successful John is, but all the challenges along the way, including the good, the bad, and the ugly and some of the challenges that go along the way, and then, so so that's kind of what it is. Now, the other thing that you may find interesting, the book is available on all the major networks, and
Mm-hmm.
it's also in audio. Now, I'm going to show you something, not on this book, but all the books that I do. I don't know, this is against all odds, ADHD. Can you see what it says on the back there in terms of how much it costs?
It's $25.47. US or Canada?
That's what it is.
Oh, 25.47.
So all my books are 25.47. It's
All
Canadian.
the
So yeah.
okay, okay. How many books do you have?
I have three. So
Okay.
the this is the first one that I wrote against
Yeah.
all odds.
Uh-huh.
Then the other part that I should say is that just to complete some of the things that I said before, is that I never felt right about it. I felt I had failed
Mm-hmm.
academically. My friends won, and then also, although it was my dream to come to Canada, and Holland is this way, is that at some point you're gonna get married and you may have to buy a house and you go lend money from the banks and then so you go to the bank and you make a proposal to them and then they said, okay, where are your diplomas? Well, I didn't have any diplomas. So so when I was in Canada, even then already I was successful. And it was on January 1997. Already I had started my business 32 years before that. You know, uh, I went into a store and I picked up a book in the store, and the book's title was Driven to Distraction, written by Dr. Halliwell. And as I opened the book, it was about ADHD. And I said, oh my God, that's me. And so I wrote in the book in Dutch. Now I finally know who I am. And then I was ashamed of it at first. What am I going to do here to the bank? I'm building companies and I'm growing the company. I go to the banker and say to the banker, okay, this is my proposal. Here's my proposal. It's all good and blah blah blah. And I want to borrow hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars to build this business. And they say, good. I said, I have to tell you one thing. I have a mental disease. It's called ADHD. They would say, have a nice day. Not today, but then that was all things that were in my mind, right?
Mm.
So the more I found out about it, then after finding the book written by Dr. Halliwell, he wrote the book in 1993. He is ADHD. He was on my podcast 2 weeks ago,
Mm.
and amazingly, and the more I found out about ADHD as I checked it out, it's I consider it to be a superpower. But it took me 5 years until I was 62 that I went to my doc's office that delivered our two daughters, and there was a personal friend. He said to
Mhm.
me, "Hey, John, why are you here?" I said, "I think I got ADHD." We checked it out. Yeah, I do. And so the more I found out about it, it's a superpower. And so I then with all the things that I'm doing and all the activity that I have, people say, how do you do it all? How can you fit that all the things in that you're doing? Is saying, well, ADHD. That's why. So, so then I felt, Anthony, because the other part about it, and especially in the podcast that I did with Dr. Halliwell, is I always believe more than, and that's what was written, more than 8% of the population have ADHD.
Mm.
I believe it's more than 20%. And as I had my podcast with Dr. Halliwell and mentioned it to him, he said, no, John, more than 25%. I agree with him. And
Mm.
then the other part about it was that, and people that are entrepreneurs or CEOs, successful ones, the at least I say to Dr. Halliwell, at least 50% of them are ADHD. He said, no, John, more than 75% of the successful ones.
Mm.
How about that one? You know,
Interesting.
and then I found it very important because I went through this whole period from the time that I was 13 and became a laborer, and I'm proud of that today,
Mm-hmm.
till the time that I was 57, 44 years, I felt that I had failed to a certain extent. Although I was very successful, I still didn't feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
That came when I picked up that book, that opened my world for me. And then I felt I had to write about it, speak about it more. It comes up in my, I don't seek it out necessarily, but it comes up frequently in my podcast that I do. And actually, the last two podcasts that I did in the last week, two individuals that had never mentioned it before said, "Yeah, I'm ADHD."
Hmm.
So I felt I had to write about it. So I wrote this book about it, ADHD Unlocked,
Hmm.
and quite successful actually. And so that became the book. And then, the other one that was important to me is that so many people do not like what they are doing, Anthony. Even people that are in jobs and they say, "Oh, I hate my job." I said, change, because you take it with you home and it affects everything around you. Change, or find something that kind of enlightens what you're doing. And then there are all kinds of excuses. I'm too old and I'm this, that, and the other things. Well, there's nothing worse than not feeling right about what you're doing. The same as young people. I present a lot to younger people, and I always ask them, "Have you thought about what you're going to do in a career?" And or a lot of them say, "Man, I don't know what to do." I said, "Well, maybe check it out. Have interviews with people. You want to be a truck driver? You want to be a carpenter? You want to be a construction individual? You want to be a lawyer, a doctor, whatever? Or for that matter, entrepreneur. Talk to those people, learn about what they do and what is attractive about their jobs, and send them to go in that direction, and because it will change your life." And I felt I had to write about that as well. So the book that I wrote is Finding Your Passion, Living the Dream.
Hmm.
And
Beautiful.
so a fair question would be, "Hey, John, are you living the dream?" I am every day, even now at nearly 83 and a half. That every morning I get up at 5:30 and I always make my bed and I'm always in a hurry. And every day to me is a good day, so that's what I like. And then the other part about it is that everybody gets a good shock somewhere around their lives. Is that in 2008 I nearly died because I got a case of diverticulitis.
Mm-hmm.
That is a rupture in your colon that, unless you attend to it, it was not just pain, but it was a rupture, and that contaminates your insides and attacks your organs. And fortunately I got it. I came that close, and it stimulated me to go to the gym and start fitness very seriously, and then also diet. And now I'm lucky. My wife, we've been together for more than 40 years. She's vegan and very health oriented, so that helps me. And
Mm-hmm.
so be very conscientious about health and fitness. So I started going to the gym, got a trainer. And the key is for me to go to the gym is like I was like a lot of other people. You make the commitment at year end, and you're going to do this, that, and the other thing, and it includes going to the gym. So you get your membership, you go there for 2 weeks, and you can find 100 reasons as why you're far too busy to go there. And so this time I said I'm going to hire a trainer, and my life is appointments. And when I go out of my way to meet commitments that I make and appointments, so that works. So I did that for about 6 years. Then initially starting in 2009, by about 15, 16, I was in the gym and somebody came to us, my trainer, and say, "Hey, John, have you ever thought about competing?" I said, "Me? Yeah." I said, "No." And then I thought, yes, that's what I'm going to do. Why not? Right. So I did, and then started competing, and then obviously became successful in Northern BC, then provincially, then nationally, and then to the Arnolds. But it hasn't become part of my life. And then also, what became part of it is diet and the importance of that. So most of what we do is keep it very, very simple. Is that a lot of our diet is plant based, and I'm probably 80-20 vegan, and I'm very conscientious of what we eat and try to stay fit. And so I felt I had to write a book about it, and I did. This one is nearly done. Will come out in August. Living young, dying
Dying
old.
old. That's where we started. Living young, dying old.
Yeah, and that's me on there. So I'm still working on it, but I'm getting close to competing, and I'm going to win again, obviously.
Oh
So
yeah, definitely. You're a winner. You've been winning all this time, and we sure look forward to experiencing you in your victory, forthcoming victory.
exactly.
Yeah. The book you just presented right before there is Finding Your Passion, Living the Dream, and that's what we've titled our episode as Finding Your Passion, Living the Dream. Now, I want you just in a few minutes, because our episode is just about to come to the end. Tell the listener or the viewer how they can find their passion and live their dream. And you already mentioned quite some there. And if someone was listening keenly, then there could be some notes that he or she have taken. Now, please tell us how we're going to find our passion and live our dream.
How to find it? The book, or you mean a lifestyle?
Well, the lifestyle. I want to find my passion. I want to live my dream. And definitely, people are informed that if you want to see John's books, go to
So
Amazon. They will be there, and many other
yeah,
places you
and
can
and
find them.
audio, I did audio as well. But the key for me is to find your passion. Is that started early in life. That's by the Canadian Army that came here. I wanted to go to Canada, and then I wanted to build my own lumber mill. Get those dreams. Get the and take it one step at a time. Even when I was a cleanup man at a mill here, and I still remember sending my one of my Texas then in 1965. We didn't have iPhones and all of that kind of stuff. So send a text. I got a job. I'm a lumber pilot, or and I'm making $2 an hour. So I was well on the way to success in my mind. And I kept working and working, always looking ahead, step at a time, step at a time. But I came very good at what I'm doing. And what really said it made me uniquely different from other people is when at 13 I became, I'm not suggesting everybody should leave school, that's not what I'm saying, but in my circumstance, leaving school at 13 was and becoming a furniture maker gave me a foundation that other people didn't have. The other one was that I've always, even in with all the challenges in my own little world, I always had attitude, passion, work ethic, working hard. Even when I was a kid, I started, even at 10 or 12, I started selling papers or collecting bottles and selling. I was always industrial. And then I had this hunger to learn, listening to successful individuals. Even when I was in Holland, I would save my money because somebody would be speaking in some community about success and self-confidence and business. I would go there and listen to them. Drucker, Management by Drucker, classic book, was important for me, and so I followed that. And then the other gift that I had, Anthony, was that I have an amazing memory, and
Mm.
then I was always good at numbers for some reason or another. And then the other, so if on the foundation to the question, find your passion, attitude, passion, work ethic, that every day to me is special. And then more than, and I have an advantage over a lot of people. I grew up in war. I still feel it. I saw that in my family, and the results of it and all the challenges. I appreciate every single day that we have. And the other part that I do is I give back to the community. I'm always part of the community, and more so than any of the other things. And the other things that I do is not for making a lot of money. That's not part of my objective. It is sharing with other people, being part of the community, and giving back. And and then satisfaction in terms of being able to follow my passion.
Hmm. Wow, wow, wow. Thank you for that. We really appreciate that. Uh, and as I said, you heard it, you who is listening or watching. I told you we have a special guest. This has been a special guest. John, thank you very much for coming. And I have a lot of questions to ask, but then at some point we're going to end this episode. But thank you very much for coming.
Anthony, my friend, it was a privilege. Thank you.
Yeah, before you go, I realize that there is a trend of threes in your life, and I'm extending this episode. It's all for the good. There's a trend of threes. You land in Canada, you have three books, and then your three key phrases are attitude, passion, and work ethic. It, you've written a book against all odds, which is three words. You read an interesting book that was driven to distraction at some point, three words. Anything to do with the number that you stick to it? That it
The price of the book 25.47, because that's the one. But what follows is that they are all written from the heart. I'm a storyteller. That's what I am. I tell my story, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But first and foremost, it is to follow attitude, passion, work ethic. Never, never, never give up. Always stay the course and appreciate to what you have.
okay? We take that. Thank you for that. You've shared quite much. You've got much, much, much more to speak about. And so we would request people to follow up with you so that they can get to learn more from you. How can they connect with you? Please tell us, John.
JohnABrink.com is our link, and so anything that comes through that we will see and we will react to.
Okay, so www.johnabrink.com.
Correct,
That's
John.
the place that you can connect with John. Now,
And
tell
then
us.
the other thing, Anthony, sorry to interrupt you. The other thing is that I'm very active on podcasting, and it's on the brink with John A. Brink,
On,
and
on,
we interact with Podmatch.
now we're gonna find that. We're gonna find that. We had that. We're gonna find that. Now, I say you can't finish. You're more than active on very many areas, and we're gonna follow up with you to find out all the secrets you told about exercise. You told about eating. You told us. So I know there's much more that you haven't said, but just before we go, please tell us one thing that we should never forget. Which is it?
Appreciate where you live, your family, and the things around you, because the opposite is horrible and will affect you. I've been there, I've been in war and seen the results of it. So appreciate every single day, give back to the community, stay active, and appreciate a democratic country. And dictatorship is something that is horrible. And so the other part, when I talk about Germany and the things that happened, is that we were all victims, including the population, that were affected by a dictator. And we see that around the world. If we see it in Russia, we see it in Iran, we see it in Korea, the Middle East, where we have dictators that that appreciate the democratic process, with all these flaws and all the challenges alongside with it, much better than the alternative.
Nothing to add on that. Once again, thank you, thank you, thank you very much, John, for being with us here today.
It was my pleasure, Anthony. Take care.
Yes. Yes, and we also thank our viewers and our listeners. Thank you. Please remember to share this with all your friends. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, please subscribe. And yes, Angela has been here with us all through, and she's thanking you. And she's saying, "Right, do good, and make bridges."
I like that.
So yes, that's a good one, Angela. And thank you for being with us here all through. And so, with that, we've come to the end of this special episode that has been extended, but it's all for the good. And yeah, that's about it. And until next time, this has been your host, Anthony Morore. And together with our special guest today, John Brink, we're saying bye for now. Bye.